Anyway, we're delighted to have the Prime Minister here. This is an exciting time for us, and we know, of course, Prime Minister Abe. We know of his leadership through the years, and we're really delighted to have him here. We welcome him. We're excited that he can be with us today. And thank you, Prime Minister. We're delighted to have you here. I would especially like to say words of thanks for our colleagues who are here. I would like to welcome Foreign Minister Kishida. We're delighted to have him here. A senior advisor to the Prime Minister, Hasegawa, is with us. Deputy Chief Cabinet Secretary Kato is with us. Ambassador Rich Armitage, of course, is with us. Rich is one of my bosses, so I really do have to recognize him. Ambassador Tom Schiefer, did great service for America in Japan. We're delighted to have you here. And Governor Parnell, we're delighted to have you here from Alaska. And he's our closest state to Japan and has the keenest interest in Japan. And it's really wonderful to have you here, Governor. Pleased to have you. Thank you. There's a new word in Washington. It's called Abenomics. It's the new economics that Prime Minister Abe is bringing to Japan. We rather need a little bit of that here in Washington. We got to get ourselves started again, and I think that's exactly what Prime Minister Abe is doing in Japan, and it's an exciting time. I would just like to take a second to say, I don't know how many of you have listened to the Prime Minister talking about his foreign policy agenda, and it's very important. And I just would like to say he's articulated 5 key principles for Japan's foreign policy going forward. To protect freedom of thought, expression, and speech in Asia Pacific. Can you think of anything more important than that? Honestly, this is going to help transform the region. To ensure that the seas are governed by rule of law and not by intimidation or power. To pursue free and open interconnected economies throughout the region. To bring about a more fruitful intercultural tie with Japan and other countries in Asia, and to promote an exchange with the younger generation. These are the 5 principles that Prime Minister Abe has articulated, and I think they're good for America. If this is successful, it's going to be good for us, and this is a partnership that's good for us, and we celebrate that and we welcome it. We're going to have a chance to hear Prime Minister Abe. He's been here today. He had a meeting with the President. It was extended. It was an important visit that got extended because there were additions. I don't know how much he's going to tell us. I'm going to ask him, by the way. I mean, we want to know. But I think it's a very important dialogue that we have between Japan and America. This is the most foundational relationship that we have in Asia, and we need this to be a successful relationship. And I know that Prime Minister Abe is going to be a key leader for that. About 80% of Americans believe that the U.S.-Japan relationship is the most important foundational relationship in Asia. And I think that's emblematic of this, how important we give this relationship and why it's so important that Prime Minister Abe would be here so early in his tenure and in President Obama's second term. So we're delighted to have him here. Would you please welcome him with your applause, Prime Minister Abe. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Hamre, for your warm introduction. Thank you, Secretary Armitage, and thank you, Ambassador Schiefer, and thank you, Governor Parnell. Thank you, Dr. Green, and thank you all for joining me today. Last year, Richard Armitage, Joseph Nye, Michael Green, and others published a paper about Japan. They asked if Japan would end up becoming a Tier 2 nation. Secretary Armitage, here is my answer to you. Japan is not and will never be a Tier 2 country. That is the core message I am here to make. And I should repeat it by saying, I am back. And thank you. and so shall Japan be. That much is what I have wanted to say. I could stop here and take your questions for the next 15 minutes. I know, however, that Ambassador Sasae has started to look very much anxious. So I'll go on talking anyway. Bear with me for another 20 minutes. The time I spent 5 long years since leaving office as Prime Minister was my time for reflections. First and foremost, I reflected upon where Japan should stand in the future. I didn't think whether Japan could do this or that. I thought more often what Japan must continue to do. Here are the 3 tasks that were always in my mind while I was thinking that way. Firstly, when the Asia-Pacific or the Indo-Pacific region gets more and more prosperous, Japan must remain a leading promoter of rules. By rules, I mean those for trade, investment, intellectual properties, labor, environment, and the like. Secondly, Japan must continue to be a guardian of global commons, like maritime commons, open enough to benefit everyone. Japan's aspirations being such. Thirdly, Japan must work even more closely with the US, Korea, Australia, and other like-minded democracies throughout the region. The rules promoter, a commons guardian, and an effective ally and partner to the US and other democracies must Japan be. I also looked at the globe. It tells me that as your long-standing ally and partner, Japan is a country that has benefited from and contributed to peace and prosperity in the Asia-Pacific for well over half a century. The bedrock for that, needless to say, has been our alliance. It is high time, in this age of Asian resurgence, for Japan to bear even more responsibilities to promote our shared rules and values, preserve commons, and grow side by side with all the high achievers in the region. No luxury is allowed for Japan to be self-absorbed in its struggle against economic malaise. My mental globe also told me that Japan must remain a robust partner in the fight against terrorism. My resolve is even stronger now after what happened in Algeria, the killing of 10 Japanese and 3 American engineers. The world still awaits Japan. I thought in promoting human rights in the fight against poverty, illness, and global warming, and the list goes on. That's why, ladies and gentlemen, I stood for office again. That's why I'm resolute to turn around Japanese economy. I said a moment ago that the Asians are making great progress, with the exception of a single country. I should have added the exception, of course, North Korea. my government, upon their nuclear test, introduced an added sanction against Pyongyang. Their nuclear ambitions should not be tolerated unless they give up on developing nuclear arsenal, missile technologies, and release all the Japanese citizens they abducted. My government will give them no reward. This is no regional matter, but a global one. Japan, on my watch, should work hard with the US, South Korea, others, and the United Nations to stop them from seeking those ambitions. Now, if you looked at the lapel of my jacket, I put on a blue ribbon pin. It is to remind myself each and every day that I must bring back the Japanese people who North Korea abducted in the 1970s and 80s. Among them was a girl, Megumi Yokota, who was only 13. That is also the reason why, as a nation firmly behind human rights, Japan must stay strong. Strong first in economy and strong also in its national defense. Let me tell you, Japan must be austere as well. Yet, I led my government to increase for the first time in many years the budget for homeland defense. So today, here with you, with John, Mike, and all my distinguished friends and guests, I make a pledge. I will get back a strong Japan, strong enough to do even more good for the betterment of the world. Thank you. The Japanese voters have given me a renewed opportunity as Prime Minister to turn my tasks into reality. Each morning, I wake up with a solemn and somber sense of tremendous responsibility. Now, there is something called Abenomics. I didn't coin the word. Markets did. It is the name for my 3-arrow economic booster plan. In Japan, deflation has gone on for more than a decade. My plan, or Abenomics, is to get rid of that first and foremost. Indeed, it has made a jump start. As the first arrow, I urged Bank of Japan to do their job on a dimension they thought they couldn't do. Investors, both Japanese and foreign, have started to buy Japanese shares. Japan's industry will better greased due to export growth. Tokyo Stock Index has risen as a result. The second arrow is to carry out a supplementary budget, huge enough to lift the economy by 2% and create 600,000 jobs. The third one is about growth strategy. Private consumption and investment will come much sooner than we expected. So far, all economic indicators point north. True, we have shot those arrows before,